Hey there, Deluxe fans! Hope you're feeling particularly magical today. With all of the love that Pixar's newest animated film, Turning Red, has been receiving, fans of the movie can't help but wonder if there's any news about Turning Red 2. Turning Red was the first Pixar film to be directed and created by a team consisting entirely of women, and it ended up being a movie unlike anything else Pixar had ever released, so it's no wonder everyone is so curious. And though there hasn't been any official word on a potential sequel to Turning Red, all of the positive reviews it has been receiving makes it a shoo-in for a second movie. Here's everything that we currently know about the possibility of a Turning Red 2, as well as a few fan theories about what the plot might consist of. Pixar's Turning Red took place in Toronto, Canada, back in 2002, and followed the life of Mei Lin Lee, better known as Mei. Mei was a 13-year-old Chinese-Canadian girl who does her best to live up to the high standards placed on her by her mother. Mei is seen as a straight-A student who constantly goes above and beyond to please her family. She has dedicated her life to her parents while also managing to build a strong circle of friends consisting of 3 other girls around her age. It's around this time that Mei began experiencing changes throughout her body as she began to approach adulthood. However, on top of dealing with puberty, Mei has also learned to cope with a special ability that caused her to transform into a giant red panda when she would get too excited. While at first, this was very overwhelming for Mei, throughout the course of the movie, she learns to not only live with this new red panda side of hers, but also learn to connect with it and make it a part of her identity. The drawback to her connecting with the panda was that her family, including her mother Ying and her grandmother Wu, expected her to get rid of the red panda spirit during the next blood moon. This meant that Mei had to decide for herself who she wanted to be once and for all, despite how her decision might make her mother feel. This coming-of-age story was one that was widely accepted by audiences around the world who quickly found themselves enthralled by the amazing animation style used for the film and the phenomenal in-depth character design. Mei was a character to whom most people can relate, and Turning Red shined a bright light on the pressures and generational trauma that can be passed down throughout a family over time. Now, Turning Red followed the same trend as the 2 Pixar films that preceded it, Luca and Soul, by being released directly onto Disney Plus with no extra cost to view. While that upset some fans, along with a few people who worked on the film who felt that Pixar studios were being snubbed by not getting any theatrical releases, many rejoiced at being able to view the movie on the day it came out with no additional cost aside from the subscription fee. At the end of the day, Turning Red was well received around the world, and everyone who had the opportunity to see it loved it. Fans of the film absolutely cannot wait to see what will happen next in the world of Turning Red. That being said, there has currently been no word or official statement by Pixar or the creative team behind Turning Red about a possible sequel, though it would seem likely considering its popularity and the fact that the creators of the film claim to be open to the idea of creating more content in the Turning Red universe. The director of Turning Red, Do-Mei Shi, spoke exclusively with the team over at comicbook.com about whether or not a sequel for her hit film was in the works, and all she had to say was this: "We are open, but we haven't talked about it." That also means that the team that worked on Turning Red hasn't begun brainstorming ideas for a plot for the potential sequel, and for fans, that's both a good and a bad thing. The bad thing is that this means that we are even farther away from a Turning Red 2 than any of us would truly care to admit. The good thing, however, is one of the best parts about being a Pixar fan is that we will all get to come up with theories and discuss ideas as to what we think or want the plot for Turning Red 2 to be. And with the way that Turning Red ended, there are certainly a bunch of possibilities as to where the story can go from here. If you saw Turning Red, you know that the movie ended with Mei confronting her mother about her independence, which resulted in a small fight between Mei's panda spirit and her mother's that happens to be Godzilla-sized. However, after managing to perform the blood moon ritual in time, Mei and her family are able to have a heartwarming conversation about how much they will love and support one another no matter what, and then each of them individually decided whether or not they wanted to stay bonded with their red panda spirits. This resulted in Mei being the only member of her family who wanted to stay bonded with her red panda spirit, while the rest of her family had grown accustomed to their lives without it. Mei began to wonder at first whether or not she made the right choice, but it looks like her ancestor, Sun Yi, not only approved of her decision, but seemed to be pleased by it. At the very end, we got to see Mei living a more open life around her mother, while they all tried to earn money to rebuild the stadium that they had destroyed during their panda deathmatch. All in all, it was a very nice ending, and left us a lot lot to go off of in terms of a sequel or even a possible prequel film. After all, according to Domei Shi, Mei's decision to stay bonded to the Red Panda's spirit is an invitation at the end for more stories. With Mei deciding to keep the ability to transform, this means that going forward, the relationship between future generations and the Red Panda spirits will begin to change when compared to the people before Mei. It'll be really interesting to see where the creators of Turning Red decide to take the next movie. I wonder if we will see Mei living out her high school years, or possibly even older and going through adulthood. Now, as we mentioned, the best part about speculating about a possible sequel or prequel is coming up with theories about the next plotline, and a few of our favorites happen to involve a jump forward or even backward in time. The first concept that we think the plot for Turning Red 2 could follow would see time go about 20 years or so into the future from the original Turning Red to a time that is relatively close to our time at the present. We will get to see Mei as an adult, and now that she is playing the role of the mother to a daughter who is about to experience the same massive changes that she did. Only this time, instead of teaching her daughter to fear the panda spirit like Mei's mother did to her, Mei would likely help her daughter learn to live in peace with the spirit and hopefully help her develop into her own person just like she was able to. Or perhaps the opposite would happen. Maybe we would see Mei with a young daughter who is going through puberty, and even though she tries to help her daughter embrace the Red Panda spirit, her daughter decides to go down a different path than Mei did. And Mei's daughter might want to figure out who she is as an individual without the weight of the Red Panda hanging over her. Perhaps hers will be more violent or aggressive like Ying's was, which would make her more likely to be afraid of the spirit rather to embrace it. Now, another fun idea for another Turning Red film would actually be more of a prequel storyline that follows the life of Sun Yi and the origin of the blessing that she had prayed for. We could learn exactly why she was so interested or enamored by the Red Panda and how she might have used the spirit to save her people while the men were off at war. This would also give us a deeper insight as to what Sun Yi's relationship was with her family, which would be interesting to compare to the family dynamics we saw in the original Turning Red. I'm not sure if we could expect to see a Turning Red prequel anytime soon, but there is no doubt in my mind that they could do something really interesting with the concept. They could even do a prequel that follows Mei's mother Ying so that the audience could see what experiences she had with the massive Red Panda spirit that was bonded to her spirit, though that one might make for a more interesting animated short. But no matter what you think the plot for another Turning Red would be, it's hard to argue the possibilities seem limitless. As we mentioned before, Turning Red 2, or a sequel to Turning Red, has not been announced or greenlit by the studio. This doesn't mean that we can't speculate on a possible release date of the movie should they announce it. The first thing that should be taken into consideration is how long it took them to make the first Turning Red, which, according to the creators, had been in development for nearly 5 years. Work began on the first Turning Red back in 2017, shortly after Domei Shi had finished working on Bao, a Pixar animated short film. Pixar officially announced Shi as the writer and director of the project a year later, in May of 2018, and by November of that year, it was announced that the movie was officially in development, and despite the movie taking a total of 5 years to release, it is said to have been one of the fastest developing times out of any Pixar full-length film. With all of that being said, even if they were to announce that they are working on a sequel to Turning Red, we still won't be seeing it for years. Now, it could be argued that it might not take as long to develop the project considering the world and a lot of the characters are already structured and designed, but the story would still need to be written and approved of by the studio. The earliest we could speculate that we might see a sequel or even possibly a prequel to Turning Red would most likely be around 2026 or maybe 2027. And I know that sounds like a long time, but with the amount of care that went into making the first movie, I have a feeling that the sequel would be well worth the wait. Where it stands, Mei is merely at the beginning of her new life, and is about to spend the next couple of years creating formative relationships and learning how to navigate around her social and her personal life. Plus, she still needs to get the full experience of a four-town concert, since the last one she went to was cut short by circumstances that literally nobody could have seen coming. Mei also has to figure out what her relationship with the Red Panda is, especially considering that it's only going to grow more powerful the more they bond. I'm sure you're just as excited as the rest of us to hear about another Turning Red film, so if one was announced today, what kind of plotline would you want it to follow? Did you like any of the theories that we spoke about in today's video, or do you have one of your own? Be sure to let us know in the comments below. As for now, that's all Disney fans. Let us know what video you'd like to see next in the comments, and like and subscribe for more magically packed videos.